Good afternoon everybody, and welcome to the first in a series of 6 webinars looking at pet bereavement support. I'm going to give people a few minutes to come in because not everybody can get in the door all at once. So while we're waiting for people to arrive, I'm just going to put a quick poll up on the screen and see what sort of backgrounds you've all come from. And then when everybody's in the room, we can make a start. So just a quick question there. What is your profession? What's your background? Okay, good. So we've got a range of different backgrounds there. Veterinary professional and also some other professions. If you've got another profession that you think is relevant, please do feel free to just pop it in the chat box there and tell us what you do. We've also got some people who have said their profession isn't relevant, they're here because their personal interest, which is perfectly acceptable as well. We've got a receptionist. So we've got quite a few people that are in here not because of their profession but because they've got a personal interest in pet bereavement support. And couple of veterinary professionals, so vets or nurses and receptionists. Okay, so I think we've got a nice crowd of you in now, so I will make a start because this first webinar is only 30 minutes and I don't want to go over too long because I know that some of you will be on your lunch break. We will make a start. So as I said, welcome to the first of 6 webinars looking at pet bereavement support, and today we're going to just have a look at a brief introduction to pet bereavement support and to the rest of the webinar series. My name is Julia Dando. I'm the training manager at the Society for Companion Animal Studies. Now you might be wondering, who are SCAS? Never heard of them before. Hopefully one or two of you have, because I recognise some names in the audience there. So these are the things we're going to be looking at today. We're going to have a look at who is SCAS, who is the Society for Companion Animal Studies, what is pet bereavement support, who needs it and why, who provides it and when, and we will be looking at the rest of the webinar series that's coming up and what's going to be included in those further webinars. So just to start with, a little bit of background. The Society for Companion Animal Studies has been around now for 30 years and we promote the study of human companion animal interactions, the bond between people and their pets, and raise awareness of the importance of pets in society. And over the past 30 years we've been establishing ourselves as the leading human companion animal bond organisation in the UK. Some time ago, in 1994, SCAS developed the Pet Bereavement Support Service, and together with the Blue Cross we've been running the Pet Bereavement Support Service since 1994, and the Pet Bereavement Support Service provides basically free telephone support. It's a helpline and is available free to the UK. It's a 0800 number, and whilst that is free phone in the UK, if you dial in from outside of the UK you still can call the Pet Bereavement Support Service, but it may not be free. However, I am under the impression that if you use Skype to call a free phone number in another country, you can still have that for free. So you'll need to check that out because I haven't tested it in another country. But I have phoned America from this country on Skype, a free phone number, and it was still free. So that's worth checking out if you're in another country, which I know that one or two of you are. So basically 365 days a year, from 8:30 in the morning till 8:30 in the evening, there's a fantastic network of trained volunteers offering emotional support to those who have or are going through the very sad experience of losing a pet. So what is support? Let's have a think first of all about what is bereavement. Bereavement is the loss of a significant other in your life. And bereavement is often followed with grief. And grief, sometimes people say to me, oh, grief is an emotion. Well, it's not an emotion. Grief is made up of a number of responses, one of which is emotions. It incorporates emotions, but also physical and psychological responses or even symptoms to bereavement. Pet bereavement support is about offering emotional support to people. It's not counselling, and we'll discuss why in a moment. So it involves emotional support. It will involve a great deal of listening and showing the person that you understand what they're going through. It requires empathy, and there's a difference between sympathy and empathy. And in one of the webinars coming up later in the series, we'll be looking in more detail at the differences between sympathy and empathy and the importance of knowing the difference. There are a number of skills that can be incorporated when supporting people through pet bereavement, including what we call active listening skills. Which can really help with the I don't know what to say circumstance. Those of you that are working in an environment where you are offering support to people who have lost their pets, so in a veterinary surgery, for instance, you know, these are not skills that were taught necessarily in your veterinary nurse training or your veterinary training. There are a number of skills that can be learned called active listening skills, and that doesn't just mean listening attentively, although listening attentively itself is an active listening skill, but there are a number of tools that you can use that really help with knowing what to say. And very importantly, pet bereavement support will be about signposting, showing people where they can go for further support. Okay. So, counselling. Perhaps you might have some ideas. You can pop them in the chat box there. Why is it not pet bereavement counselling? Nobody's typing, so you're either too afraid to type in the chat box or not sure you know the answer. And of course, now that I say that, everybody's typing. I'll give it away. It's not counselling. Yeah, because we're not psychologists. Absolutely, Mona. Counselling is given by a qualified counsellor. Now, I'm not saying that you're not a qualified counsellor. Some of you may well be qualified counsellors out there who wish to learn more about how to support people with specific pet bereavement needs. And in that case, you are offering pet bereavement counselling. But unless you are a qualified counsellor, you are not. Counselling is usually structured over a specific time, and there's usually a formal contract between the client and the counsellor, and a specified time and a number of goals with specific outcomes outlined. And it will involve very careful monitoring, evaluation, and counsellors need to adhere to regulations. Whilst we are offering emotional support in our roles to people who are suffering the loss of a pet, we are not necessarily offering counselling support. Emotional support can be offered by anybody. We are often on a daily basis offering emotional support to those around us, maybe family members, friends, colleagues, and it really does involve quite a lot of listening. So, pet bereavement support. Who needs it and why? I mean, it's just a cat, right? Just a dog? Just a rabbit? And God forbid that you've got something quite as disgusting as a rodent or a snake or a spider. I mean, ugh, it's vermin, right? Yes, that is me with rat, by the way. Well, of course it's not just a cat, just a dog, just a rat. Because the bond between people and their pets, whatever their pet might be, whether it be a dog, a horse, or a stick insect, is a very mutual and intense relationship. It's what we call an attachment relationship. And again, we'll go into more detail in this about the human companion-animal bond and the reason it's so intense for people later in one of the further webinars. The relationship between people and their animals is often is described as a parent-child bond because it's an attachment. I mean, how many of you out there call your pets your babies? Or at least have clients or friends or family that call your pets your babies? Yep, absolutely, and I can put my hand up there too. There are a number of people and groups of people that the bond will become much stronger for. Can you think of who those people might be? Who is going to be more affected by the loss of a pet? Who's going to have perhaps a much stronger bond than even we with our pets? Who are those going to be? Absolutely, yes, the elderly, the lonely. Children do have very special needs with animals as well. Those who are going through a difficult time, absolutely. Those with mental health issues. Perhaps a pet belonged to their late spouse, and it's a link. The bond that they have with their animal it's because it's a link to their deceased husband or father or mother. And for a lot of people in that group, the elderly, the lonely, actually having a pet can really give people a reason to get up in the morning. As I say, children have a number of very special needs with regards to pet bereavement. This may be the first time that they experience a bereavement. And there are things that can be done and plenty of resources available to support children and also the parents, because clearly the parents will be dealing with their own grief as well as the grief of their child. So what sort of circumstances can lead to the loss of a pet? Some ideas in the chat box would be lovely. The obvious one, of course, is death. But again, that death may well be as a result of road traffic accident, an aging pet, illness, chronic illness, acute illness. So even if we say natural death or accidental death, euthanasia, absolutely, perhaps the person, Jackie, good point, if the person has become ill, then there may be a need to rehome the pet. Absolutely, forced to give up a pet because of personal circumstances. Lots of reasons that somebody may be going through the loss of a pet, and remember that bereavement, although we most often associate it with death, can actually, grief can be experienced not just because of a death, but perhaps because of forced separation. Things like military transfer, moving to residential accommodation, where pets are not allowed perhaps, imprisonment, domestic issues, leaving a violent partner, for instance, moving into a hostel, divorce or separation, who gets custody of the dog. Theft was mentioned up there, absolutely, very distressing. Straying, and things like mandatory euthanasia, things like the Dangerous Dogs Act, and also things like the foot and mouth disease outbreak. We often think of farmers as being very unfeeling towards their animals because they are their business, and but when we had the foot and mouth outbreak in the UK some time ago now, actually, anybody that saw the footage of farmers on TV who were absolutely distraught at losing their herds of animals, and it wasn't just about their livelihood, it wasn't just about their work, their money. They were genuinely very distressed at losing part of their sort of extended family. And for each of these different scenarios, different circumstances, for every single different person that is experiencing the loss of a pet, it's very unique. The relationship between the person and the animal, the strength of that bond, external influences, what else is going on in their life at the same time, what support structures do they have in place, the circumstances of the loss. Things like theft and straying can be very difficult because there is no sense of closure. We never know what happened to the animal. Traumatic accidents, road traffic accidents, especially if the person witnesses the death or injury, that can be extremely influential on making the loss all the more so difficult to deal with. Also, even things like anticipatory loss and anticipatory bereavement, which is basically when we know it's coming. So perhaps the dog is very ill and we know that it's coming up in the future. And actually, anticipatory grief is a very specific type of grief and can be even harder to deal with for a number of different reasons. Which again we will go through in much more detail in a later webinar. Responsibility grief, another very specialized type of grief where the decision has to be made perhaps to have the dog or cat or pet euthanized, and carries with it guilt and doubt. So each circumstance very individual. So who provides pet bereavement support? Some ideas in the chat box would be great. And I know that some of you will yourselves be in a position where you are offering pet bereavement support, perhaps on a daily basis. Yes? So Mona, you're a dog trainer yourself, so you find yourself in a position sometimes with your clients perhaps where you are offering emotional support when they have lost a pet. Absolutely. Receptionists, nurses, vets, rehoming centres, absolutely. We mustn't forget, of course, that those who can offer pet bereavement support is the Pet Bereavement Support Service. And later on in the series, and I'll put the dates up on the screen, there's another free webinar introducing the Pet Bereavement Support Service, where we will hear from one or two of the volunteers that work on the helpline And what's really important to remember with the Pet Bereavement Support Service is that it isn't just for other people. Quite often, we're especially in veterinary practice or animal welfare rehoming centres, in our professional work, we're giving people reference to the Pet Bereavement Support Service and forgetting that actually it's there for us as well. When you've had a particularly rough week in practice and you've had a lot of euthanasias, or perhaps you've been supporting somebody through the loss of a pet, and actually it can be very emotionally draining on yourself. So there's always somebody there to talk to support you and your clients. But yes, a wide variety of people are finding themselves in the position where they are offering emotional support to those who are going through the experience of losing a pet. And certainly in many cases it's not part of their professional training. And I come across this a lot with vet nurses and veterinary surgeons, that particularly with vets, they've spent years training to deal with animals, and then suddenly find that a lot of their time is spent dealing with people. So that can be a challenge for some people. So looking forward, I mentioned another free webinar. That one is on the 20th of June. You can see it down there, webinar 4, Introducing the Pet Bereavement Support Service. The other webinars in the series are paid webinars, and you can join up to those webinars from our website, and I will find you the link to those and put it in the chat box in a minute. But just to briefly go through what those are about, let me just bring up some notes here. We're going to have a look at next Wednesday. We're going to be looking at pet bereavement and why losing a pet is so hard for people. And this is where we'll be looking in some depth at the human companion animal bond, and the effects that the relationship has on people, and the impact that they face when they face the loss of that pet. Looking at those more vulnerable groups, and we'll be hearing examples of very strong bonded relationships, and you'll have a chance to share your own experiences as well, which is a very important aspect of that particular, and will appeal to all sorts of different people from different backgrounds. On the 13th of June, we're going to look very in depth at loss and grief. That will be the tissue one, okay? So bring your tissues to that one, although it's not all doom and gloom, I promise. But it is looking at how... Oh, I just need to extend the session, sorry, before we run over. So going to be looking at how loss and grief does manifest in people, the sorts of responses and behaviours that people may experience, and looking at specialised griefs like anticipatory grief and responsibility grief, and looking at how those affect people in very special ways. Webinar 5 and 6 will both be really looking at how we can really start to develop skills and protocols to support people. On the 4th of July, we'll be looking at communication skills and how, what sort of things, active listening skills, what can we say to people, what do we do, what do we say to people, what do they need from us actually, which is more importantly the question. What do people need from us when we're offering them emotional support? And on the 11th of July, we'll be looking at practical things that we can do to help people with their dealing with the loss of a pet. So if you're working in practice, or even if you are just supporting family or friends, practical things that you can do with them or suggest that they do to help them through the process. So we're just coming up to the sort of end of this. If you have any questions, please do pop them in the chat box. Thank you very much for attending, and have a good rest of the day. Thank you.